Joker 2 Folie Deux is a movie that didn't need to happen. And if it did, it surely didn't need to be a musical or whatever it was that I watched for the past 2 hours and 18 minutes. And that's a runtime that you feel every second of. Because where the first movie was an unexpected success that told the story of how society treats the mentally ill, the sequel is basically a movie that just recaps the first film and has nothing new to say. So much so that where we find our main character in the beginning of the movie is where we find him at the end of the movie. So there's no growth, no character development, and not really a story. Almost like the film shouldn't exist, but I get it. With this being one of the highest grossing movies of all time, it was inevitable that Warner Brothers was gonna back up a truck full of money to both Joaquin Phoenix and Todd Phillips and try to get another hit out of them. But I need to remind you that Joaquin Phoenix doesn't ever do sequels, and Todd Phillips, we've seen how the Hangover trilogy played out with him giving us the same movie 3 times. So the concept of a sequel doesn't really seem like a likely success just based off what we know about the creators. But me, like many other people who enjoyed the first movie, got excited at the idea of a continuation of the story. And although this wasn't exactly the traditional DC Joker movie, it was still a pretty solid film. But now fast forward to 2024, where its sequel is upon us, and after watching the movie, I can say with 100% certainty that this movie did not need to happen. Because just as an example, it's been less than 24 hours since recording that I've seen the movie, and I cannot name a single memorable moment that happened. Oh, wait, yes I can. The ending. And I cannot stress it enough, it has to be one of the most fan theory endings I've ever seen in a movie, but we'll get to that later. Because in this video, I'm going to be doing a bit of a spoiler review for the film, but also do a rewrite where I make a couple changes to the original story and see if I can get a better outcome than what we got. And if you're new to my channel, I typically do Breaking Bad content, but sometimes when you spend upwards of $100 at a movie theater for a disappointing movie, you have to think and wonder, could I have done a better job? Well, that's what we're here to find out today. So, let's talk Joker. So the movie starts off with Arthur Fleck in prison for the murders that he committed in the first movie, and we hear the lawyers talk about how he killed 5 people and they want to give him the death penalty. But the defense that they want to use is that the Joker personality is a separate personality from Arthur Fleck, which is an interesting take, but in the first film we've seen how Arthur gradually transformed into the Joker. It wasn't like a switch and then boom, he's the Joker. But funny enough, the lawyer that Arthur has wants him to really play up the fact that he's crazy and basically be that so he can avoid the death penalty. But unfortunately for them, every person who takes a stand to testify against them, from old coworkers like Gary to his neighbor Sophie, they say that the way that Arthur acted was the way that he's always been. So although they don't have much of a defense, they try their best. That is, until Arthur decides to fire his lawyer in the middle of the court case like he's Saul Goodman or something. But let's just pause the court proceedings for a moment and talk about Harley Quinn really quick. Or in this movie, Lee Quinzel, who did a really good job of playing the role of a crazy Joker fangirl, and it probably would have been a whole lot better if she wasn't singing in every single scene that she was in. And I get it, she's Lady Gaga, but I can't stress enough how this musical aspect did not work for this movie. The songs don't even factor into the story at all.
I have someone who needs me.
And the thing with this version of Harley Quinn, she plays the role of the animated series Joker, where instead of him manipulating her, in this movie, the roles are reversed and Harley Quinn is the one doing the manipulating. And a prime example is when they meet in the Arkham prison or hospital, and she made up this whole story to Arthur about her mom having her committed and her dad beating on her, only to find out that it was a lie. And it turns out that she was actually a spoiled rich girl who's some sort of psychology major. And she did all this because she was in love with the fantasy of being with the Joker. Not Arthur Fleck, but the Joker. And while they're in Arkham, the super secure prison, Harley Quinn, who is basically a glorified volunteer, was able to meet with Arthur in his cell multiple times throughout the movie, including once where they have sex. And I'll tell you right now, that was the funniest scene in the movie for me. And not only that, but she was even able to start a fire inside the building because they're allowed to smoke cigarettes inside, which I guess that's the 80s for you. But Harley Quinn's entire existence in this movie revolves around her telling the Joker how he can do anything and her putting makeup on. That's pretty much it. And one could assume that she was just a figment of his imagination like Sophie was in the first one, but in this movie they made it pretty clear that that wasn't the case. But now, let's get back to the court proceedings where Arthur is his own lawyer and he does this weird southern lawyer accent, but ultimately it gets him nowhere. And once he had nothing else to say, he'd have to admit that there is no Joker and he made it all up. And that pisses off his supporters, including Harley Quinn, who storms out of the courtroom after he says that the Joker's not real. And right before his sentencing, a bomb blows up in the courtroom, and it allows Arthur to make an escape, and once he was outside, he runs into more of his supporters, some of them even dressing like him, and they're able to get him away from the scene. But once they start talking about burning the city to the ground, Arthur doesn't want anything to do with any of it, and he gets out the car and runs all the way back home. And once he gets to the legendary stairs, he would see Harley at the top smoking a cigarette, and he would tell her that he escaped for her and they can run away together now. But she would tell him that she doesn't love Arthur, she only loves Joker, and if Joker's not real, then none of this is. And she walks away from Arthur just as the police come to arrest him again. And now that Arthur's back in Arkham, he runs into a random guy that we see throughout the movie. And he tells him a joke that I really don't remember the contents of, but the punchline is, you get what you fucking deserve. And then he would stab Arthur 5 or 6 times in the chest, and while he bleeds out, the guy carves a smile in his face, showing us the audience that maybe Arthur Fleck wasn't the real Joker, but in fact, inspiration for the real Joker. And the end. Now, I know I left a lot of details out of this movie. This wasn't exactly a shot-for-shot review, but more or less, that's what happens. The movie was a court case with a song every 9 minutes that ends with Arthur dying in a prison hallway. But what if things were slightly different? What if the end of this movie didn't have to be the fall of Arthur Fleck, but the rise of the Joker? How would the movie have played out then? Well, this is what I think would happen. We can keep everything the same up until the second act of the movie when Harley Quinn starts to fire, and her and Arthur try to make their escape. But where they're unsuccessful in the original, in this version, they manage to get beyond the gates and make their way back into the city. And once they get to his old neighborhood, they go into his apartment where Arthur used to stay, but instead of going to his old home, he would actually pay Sophie a visit to introduce her to his new girlfriend. Because in his mind, that's still his ex-girlfriend that he never broke up with, and let's just say that she never learned her lesson of keeping her door unlocked. So when they go into the apartment, she is terrified of seeing Arthur again, especially after what he did to Murray Franklin. And she tries to talk him down like she did before, while slowly making her way to a knife that she has on the kitchen table. And when she gets close enough, she tries to lunge for the knife, but Lee would come around the corner with a gun that she took off the guard and quickly shoot Sophie in the stomach. And just like the first movie, Arthur turns the volume up on the TV to muffle the gunshot. And as she bleeds out on the floor, they check around to find no one else in the apartment. But Arthur, knowing that she has a kid, would want to leave. I mean, after all, he's not pure evil. So before they leave, they would get cleaned up and head over to Harley's house, which isn't too far away. And now armed with a gun and a kitchen knife, Arthur and Harley walk through a neighborhood laughing and dancing around together. And when they make it to the house, Harley, who has a spare key, sneakily goes inside the house. And after letting Arthur in the house as well, they stand over Harley's sleeping mother, and just like how he did his own mom, Arthur would take a pillow and begin smothering her with it. But when Harley's mom starts to fight back, Harley grabs a kitchen knife and begins to stab the pillow where her mom's face was, turning the pristine white pillow into a shredded, bloody mess. And in this version, the story of Harley having a deadbeat dad and a mom who had her committed is the story that we're going to be going with. So although the mom's dead, let's just say the dad is nowhere to be found. So while the two are covered in blood, they share a cigarette and begin to kiss passionately while the news of the escape Arkham fugitives plays in the background. After a day of freedom together, Arthur says to her, I wish I can blow this all up, he says, referring to the city. And Harley sits up with a determined look on her face and questions, so why don't we? And he looks at her while he blows out cigarette smoke and says, I wouldn't even know where to start. How about we start at Arkham? Harley says. And Arthur says with a smile, actually, I do know where to start. Come with me, I'll show you. And the two would head over to Arthur's old job, Ha-Ha's. And inside, they would find the place empty, and they would start to drench the place in gas. But Harley would spot Gary, who's closing up for the night, because he's now the manager. And when he sees her, he politely tells her that they're closed and she shouldn't be here. And right when she was just going to kill Gary, Arthur comes up from behind her and would want to spare him because he was the only person who was nice to him. And at first, Harley would agree and let him go. But the moment his back was turned, she would shoot him in the back, killing him right in front of Arthur. Then jokingly saying, life's too short. Then erupting with laughter. And at first, he's saddened to see his friend die. But Harley would snap him out of it and embrace him with another passionate kiss before going back to pouring gasoline all over the place. And with the strike of a match, Ha-Ha's goes up in flames while the clown couple starts to laugh at what they were able to achieve with just a match and a few gallons of gasoline. And once they hear the sirens in the distance, they would disappear into the shadows to plan for what's next. A few days go by, and the manhunt for Arthur Fleck and Harley Quinzel is still underway. And with the police finding the bodies of Sophie and Harley's mom in their homes, the clown couple would choose to lay low in Murray Franklin's old studio, where since the shooting, it's been shut down and boarded up, but they were able to call this place home for the past few days. And while inside, they find a couple $100 stuffed between the couch cushions of the studio chair, and they would use that money to meet with some of Harley's friends who also happen to be Joker supporters with connections, and they're able to get some dynamite from a construction site as well as a stolen car. And after getting dressed up in matching Joker makeup, they would drive to a courthouse where District Attorney Harvey Dent is doing a press conference. And seeing that there's a large police presence, they would park on the east side of the building and wait until everyone goes inside. And once the area was clear, they would get out of the car with Harley holding the detonator. And as the two are walking up to the courthouse, it's like they're both invisible because nobody is trying to stop them. But once they get inside the building, they come face to face with District Attorney Harvey Dent, who recognizes them instantly. But before being apprehended by the police, Arthur goes on a rant about how the justice system is a joke and how if he had money, nobody would care how many people he killed. And with this rant getting the attention of the local news station in the building, the message would reach thousands of people in Gotham, sparking chaos in the streets. And as the police finally come to arrest Harley and Arthur, to buy some time, he would say the iconic words he said to Murray Franklin, "How about another joke?" And as the police surround him, getting ready to throw the cuffs on him, Arthur says, "What's one job you can't get while working at the courthouse?" And Harley comes with a punchline saying, "A blowjob," before pressing the detonator and causing an explosion that destroyed the entire east side of the building. And after a couple minutes, Arthur is fully recovered and he goes to check on Harley. But to his shock, he sees a large rod of rebar going through her chest and she's barely able to speak, only able to get out the words, "You can do anything. You're Joker. Don't stop here." Then she would take her last breath before passing away in Arthur's arms. And with everyone still disoriented, Arthur gets up and he makes a run for it. And unknown to him how big of a deal he actually is, while he's running from the courthouse, there's a group of Joker followers who are all dressed like him, and they would spot him and quickly put him in their car to make way for a clean getaway. A couple weeks after the bombing, over in an abandoned warehouse, Arthur Fleck, who is now embracing the Joker name, stands in front of his many followers all wearing Joker makeup. And their plans going forward is to finish what Harley Quinn started, and that's to burn it all to the ground. And not just a building or a courthouse, but the entire city of Gotham. The end. Now, I'm nowhere close to a professional screenwriter, I'm just a humble YouTuber, but can we all just imagine what the movie would have been like if it would have ended like this? Where Arthur basically kills everyone that he knows and is embracing being the Joker? I think that would be cool, because although this is still not a Joker that Batman would fight, at least it would fit better with the story of the Joker. But that's just me. But now I want to hear from you guys. What do you think of this story? Do you like it better than the original? Is there anything that you change? And what are your thoughts on Joker 2 Folie? Whatever it is, let me know down below in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. Until then, my name is Merge. Later.